Hey, Wrangler 4xe fans, welcome back to episode 3 of Ask the Experts. And our expert, of course, is Dan Frye from Jeep. Pretty much gave birth to this thing after 3 years of labor and a lot of pushing, and it was born, right? That's how this worked.
Chris, every time you introduce me, you give me a more dramatic billing, and I just fear when we get to the end of this thing, I don't know if I'm going to have a chance of living up to it. Yeah, and by the way, we did have to push some vehicles early on, but the reliability has greatly improved since then.
Exactly. We didn't mean literally push. We just gave birth to. That's what we were. We're talking about the birthing process here, not the pushing down the road. So we have this list. We have this amazing list of questions that we're going through from the Facebook group, and we're just going to jump right into some of these questions. So. Some of these, I got to tell you, are really good questions. They are questions I never even thought to ask myself. So here's the first one right off the bat. Is there a right-hand drive plug on the other side? And I think what they're talking about is the cowl. Is there a cowl that can go on the passenger side so that we could have a parallel plug? And the prediction here was that the plug is going to wear out from being plugged in and unplugged every day. What can you say to that?
So it's a really creative idea. The first thing I want to say is there's a 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty on the high voltage electrification system. Please,
that's in the United States.
Assured. Yeah.
What is it? What is it in the European?
Well, it's actually that's actually the lower of the two warranties. In California emission states, it's I think 10 years, 150,000 miles. And so the point I'm trying to make, Chris, is that the vehicle, including the charge port, has been thoroughly validated to that life cycle, including, and this is actually this brings up an interesting point, right? So when you're validating a conventional, let's say, internal combustion vehicle, there's a fairly well-defined, you do this many wide open throttle accelerations and this many hard braking events over the life of the vehicle. But with a car that has two complete powertrains and two different fuel sources in it, how your customer uses the vehicle could be very different. So part of the validation fleet, in fact, runs as charge depleting all the time. So a customer who charges up at a level 2 EVSE and then depletes that charge down driving around town, and then they plug right back in and charge it up again. So those vehicles get, let's say, very few cycles on their combustion engine, but the maximum number of cycles on their, for example, charging apparatus, the charge port, the OBCM portion of the IDCM, a lot of cycles on the high voltage battery itself, full charge and depletion cycles on the high voltage battery. So there's that end of the spectrum. And then clear at the other end of the spectrum, there's a customer who, for whatever reason, buys a Wrangler 4xe but doesn't ever plug it in. And they use the vehicle as a hybrid, because, as a great man once said, the Wrangler 4xe is always a hybrid, no matter whether you charge it or not. But yeah, so both of those use cases, always electric and never electric, let's say never plugged in, are considered within the validation of the product. And so that is to say that I don't expect you're going to have any trouble with your charge port, even if you only use the vehicle as electric and charge it, let's say every 21 miles of vehicle use for the life of the vehicle. Now, that being said, it's especially interesting that this person suggested a right-hand drive plug. So the Wrangler 4xe is not offered in right-hand drive markets. So unfortunately, that answer is no. But if it were, also, it would probably be a European format plug, because, of course, let's see, it's Australia, but the UK and Japan are the major right-hand drive markets. So probably wouldn't be very useful for the United States anyway. But the bottom line is, if you did have trouble with your charge port, I don't think you're going to, but if you did, that component is itself pretty easily serviceable. It's got about a 6-foot wire harness pigtail on the end of it, and it plugs in along the frame rail. So I don't think there's any reason to be concerned with.
And it's 2 screws to get that cowl off, right? I mean, it's a
4, yeah.
4 of them. Okay, so it's pretty easy to, if that ever happened. So So one question that's come up quite often, somebody said they're moving soon. They didn't want to install a level 2 charger in their home. They're selling. They didn't have an outlet close enough. And would it be okay to run an extension cord? What are your thoughts on?
Please don't use extension cords. Please make sure that you charge your Wrangler 4xe with a grounded receptacle, a dedicated circuit, meaning please don't plug it into your garage and where your beer fridge is in the garage on the same outlet.
Right.
It's a lot of power continuously flowing for a long period of time, and short of being a licensed electrician, I'm, for example, probably not qualified to decide what gauge of extension cord is appropriate, what length, and nor do I frankly know the wire lengths in behind my wall. And so I don't risk it. At my own home, I plug the EVAC directly into the wall outlet, and I would encourage others to do the same.
And for those who are new to this whole ball game and don't know what the EVSE is.
Oh geez, I'm throwing alphabet soup at your listeners, Chris. I'm sorry. Electric vehicle service equipment, the charger.
So that's what we normally call a charger. Is actually the charger is actually in the vehicle. The EVSE is what we have hanging on our wall and providing power, right?
Yeah, so, the charger itself, the onboard charger itself is mounted in between the frame rails or the left frame rail and the rear prop shaft inside a box called the IDCM, the Integrated Dual Charge Module. And so
it has the DC to DC converter in it and everything in that one package, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so the IDCM, the D part is dual, and that says that it has two jobs. So the first job is rectifying either 110 volt or 240 volt AC power into the DC power that charges up the high voltage battery. So that's the onboard charger part of it. And then the second job that dual charging module has is what we call a buck or a step down DC to DC converter. So from the nominal 350 to 400 volts of the high voltage battery, stepping down to about 12 volts to charge up the 12 volt battery in the vehicle. And that's what powers the headlights and the radio and the wipers, and also the electronics to run the computers. So that raises an interesting point that you do need both of those batteries to have some state of charge in them to start the vehicle. Now, the high voltage battery is a lithium-ion battery, and it has, it has tolerance to operate well outside of where we actually operate it in the vehicle. But it is possible, for example, you plug in your cell phone and you leave your vehicle parked at the airport for a month, let's say. It's possible to draw down the 12 volt battery in the vehicle, and even if you have plenty of energy in the high voltage battery, in that situation, you would need to jumpstart the vehicle because it needs both the computers to be alive and to have sufficient power in the high voltage battery to start the powertrain. But the good news is jumpstarting a Wrangler 4xe is just like jumpstarting any other Wrangler. You just red to red, black to black, and it cranks right up.
Well, I'm glad you answered that because I had wondered that the other day and hadn't even thought to ask that question. That's good.
Going off the list, Chris.
Oh man, that's so awesome. You're answering questions we're not even asking. We're getting like 2 for 1. That's so amazing. So, what exactly? This is a great question. One I've had myself. What exactly does the Jeep 4xe, or does the Wrangler 4xe monitor in the fuel system? Like, how does it know when that gas is getting old? Does it chemically somehow test it, or is it just like a timer kind of thing?
Are you familiar with the KISS axiom? It's an acronym, KISS, K-I-S-S.
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple, stupid.
Oh, stupid. You were saying stupid. Okay, I was going to go somewhere else. Okay, yeah.
This algorithm is designed with the KISS axiom in mind, Chris. It's a timer. So the vehicle knows when you refuel the fuel tank, obviously, and it knows how much you put in because it knows the level before and after you fuel. So basically, it's a 90-day timer. If you have not used the fuel in the tank, and it's like a weighted average, calculates the average age of the fuel in the tank, because of course, it's very rare that your tank is completely drained when you refuel it to 100%. But anyway, when the fuel gets to that certain age, then there's the stale fuel monitor, which basically triggers the vehicle now will run the engine. So it's still a hybrid, but engine off operation is suppressed until such time as that fuel has been depleted down, burned out of the vehicle, basically, and replaced with fresh fuel. And that's just to prevent a situation where there's either contaminants or maybe water from just water vapor droplets forming inside the fuel tank, or in some climates like Michigan, where I live, you might wind up with winter fuel in the vehicle in summer or vice versa, which can cause hard starting. And so ultimately, just to avoid any potential of damage to the engine, we'll deplete out that stale fuel before it's a problem.
Got it. Okay. I'm glad that we asked that one. That was one I was wondering.
There's a couple other reasons that the engine might run, or basically that you'd get the cluster HMI, or the message in the instrument cluster that says fuel oil refresh. And I want to talk about those too, especially it's summer right now in North America, but come wintertime, we may also see another one of these situations where you see fuel oil refresh. So there is the stale fuel monitor, and then there's also it's also a propensity of all direct injection gasoline engines, including the 2-liter turbo in the Wrangler, that a cold start has a tendency to dilute the engine oil with gasoline. And basically the mechanics of that are the piston rings are not fully warmed up, they're not fully expanded, and because it's direct injection, some of that the fuel droplets can stick to the wall of the combustion chamber as opposed to getting atomized and mixed and burned as part of the combustion process. So what happens when the fuel sort of washes down the cylinder walls into the engine oil is that the oil can become diluted, and therefore it can get less good at its job of lubricating, the crankshaft and the cam journals, etc. And if that should happen, there's also another algorithm running in the Wrangler 4xe to inhibit electric-only operation in that situation. So if the oil becomes diluted with gasoline, then you may find that up to an hour worth of just steady state driving with the oil up to temperature is needed to evaporate that fuel out of the gasoline. It does get burned. It's not like it's released to the atmosphere. It gets used for combustion. But in order to do that, you have to have the engine oil up to a high temperature to basically evaporate that fuel back into the crankcase ventilation system. So the sort of triggering conditions for that are a lot of cold starts. And so you see a lot of cold starts when it's cold outside. Okay. So we may encounter that come winter time. And obviously the solution is just get the engine warm and drive it for a period of time. And once you've evaporated that fuel out, then it'll automatically return to normal operation.
Wow, I feel smarter because of this call.
Well, I mean, hopefully you don't encounter any of this stuff, right? Hopefully It's just the backup behind that never gets triggered. But certainly some customers, like if let's say you're driving 3 miles every day and really all you're doing is warming up the engine twice a day when you drive to work and back home again, and you never actually get all the way to full temperature, then you may encounter this.
Well, so on the tail end of that one, another question, I'm not even sure it came into our group, but I've just seen on Twitter and stuff, people were concerned about, let's say I leave my house, driving in electric mode, go get on the highway, I'm doing 70 miles an hour, and then all of a sudden this engine's starting. Is there some engineering going into this particular 2-liter that makes that okay? I mean, that would kind of be hard on a regular gas engine, right? I mean, if you just all of a sudden, hey, I'm doing 70 miles an hour all of a sudden, what's different about the 2-liter in the 4xe that helps with that?
Yeah, so there's no hardware difference, but there's some torque reserve that basically allows that transition to be very smooth from the engine's perspective. And you actually bring up a good opportunity to talk about another feature called, we call it NITI. That's not something that we talk about in public, but it's basically initial speed, initial torque. So you may have encountered driving your 4xe a situation where the engine RPM hangs right at 1600 RPM and it feels like you're driving an electric car. So basically, in that situation, you're driving a series hybrid, and what the engine is doing is exactly what you're asking about. It's running at an elevated speed load point, not so elevated so as to cause damage, a hard warm up. But what it does is it lights off the catalytic converter very quickly.
And that's with the LEC. Was it ILC clutch? Is that the front clutch or the back? Which one's the front one?
The K0 clutch is the front
K0 clutch, yeah. So that's when that's open and it's operating as a series hybrid, like some other plug-in hybrids that are on the market where the engine doesn't have access to the drivetrain, right?
Exactly.
So is the Wrangler 4xe a series hybrid or a parallel hybrid? And do you just say yes? Yes. Okay. That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, so, depending on what you do with the clutch. It doesn't run in series hybrid very often, just because the optimizer space. So we're gonna get a little deep here, but bear with me. So this real-time optimizer that we talk about that runs in the hybrid controller is at all times is considering a lot of inputs from what's the driver torque request, what mode am I in, what is the battery state of health and temperature and power limits, what is the temperature of the accessory drive belt to start the engine if I need to do that, what is the temperature of the engine itself, etc. So all of these many inputs from around the powertrain, let's say, are considered, and then a few important decisions are made. Number one, should I have the engine on or off? Should I operate in gears 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8? Should I operate in a series mode or in a parallel mode? That's when we talk about the real-time optimizer. That's the core fundamental algorithm of the hybrid controls that's making that decision repeatedly at all times while the engine is running, or while the powertrain is drive ready. And so this decision, series hybrid versus parallel hybrid, is one of the outputs of that optimizer. In practice, the Wrangler 4xe really only uses series mode when it's warming the cat up.
Okay. And I've seen that. I caught that on, if you watch your tachometer, you can see it doing that occasionally. You can feather the pedal and you can feel you're accelerating and decelerating, but the tach's not changing. So I've caught that.
Hey, Chris, while we're talking, I just had an idea, and I think you are the man who can answer a question, or to put it.
Hey, I'm asking the questions here, buddy. You're the expert. I'm the asker.
All right. Well, I'm at the end of my knowledge. No, one of the things that we have been talking about is the tach, because you mentioned during this cat light off mode, you've seen your tach hang at 1600 RPM, even as you can tell the transmission is shifting, and that's series operation. One of the things we've talked about is what the tach should do when the engine's off, when you're just driving down the road, because of course there's stuff that's spinning in there, right? Your P2 motor is.
I wish it were two tachs.
Okay. So maybe this is a poll. I think we just had a good idea. We'll have to talk about it a little bit later on. What should we do with considering the constraint of a single tach? Would you want it to show you the speed of your electric motor, given that now you have less feedback about when the engine's running versus not? Right. Or do you like it the way it is, or do we want two tachs, or maybe a digital only solution? I think there's some interesting things we could do here.
Oh, interesting. Yes. Yeah.
Obviously, what we wound up choosing to do was have the tach only show the engine speed, and have the vehicle manage the electric RPM.
Well, I think we need to ask in the comments below. That's how we call that a segue, I guess. In the comments down below, what do you think about that? If you have the Wrangler 4xe currently, I kind of like that it's shut off, because then I'm like, yes, I'm driving in electric mode. But I will say it would be nice to be able to have some feedback of what that P2 motor is doing. And on the tail end of I'll add this, I think we're reaching the end of this episode, but a lot of people ask, why does the Wrangler 4xe have a transmission? And it's because of the gas engine. You know, we have to have that, and we have to have it at the right gear ratio when in electric mode, so that engine can start and be in the right gear. So that it kind of, I don't know why I'm answering the question I was supposed to ask you, but I think you.
Because you know how this stuff works, Chris. No. Actually, here's another tidbit, so I can build on what you said. Even if the 4xe were a pure battery electric, it would still have selectable gears, and that's because well, you saw it with the magneto concept. It particularly for the rock crawling use case, there's a lot of benefit to just being able to go low and slow, and a lot of a conventional, whatever a conventional battery electric passenger car is, a lot of them have either a single speed or maybe a 2-speed automatic transmission. In the case of a battery electric Wrangler, this is just me talking because we're not talking about future products under consideration, but you probably would still need a big gear reduction, or you'd still want a big gear reduction just to get that rock crawl behavior really capable and drivable.
Right. Well, let's close this episode with this is an easy question. I think this is an easy one. This is an important question for people that are new to electrification and have never experienced plugging in their vehicle into a wall before. Can I overcharge my Wrangler 4xe? Meaning, once it's done charging, do I have to immediately unplug the 4xe? Valid concern.
No. Yeah, not a valid concern. Absolutely something that people thought about very carefully. No, you don't have to worry about overcharging the Wrangler 4xe. You don't have to worry about memory effect. If you had nickel cadmium RC cars as a kid, none of that applies with the lithium ion chemistry that we've got in this vehicle. You could, like I said earlier, you could use this as an electric vehicle, just charging, getting 21, 22 miles of all electric range, and then charging again. You could use it that way for its entire life. Or you might choose to just use it as a hybrid Wrangler and never plug it in. Either one, the battery would be totally fine with. In addition, you can leave the vehicle plugged in overnight. You can leave the vehicle plugged in for a month. If you like, the electronics will sort it all out. And when you get back to the vehicle, it'll be 100% ready for you to go.
Nice way to end the episode. I think that was a 3-for-1. That's a personal record of getting 3 answers out of 1 question. Well, Dan, thank you for being in this episode, and thank you to if you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube, wherever you're watching us. Thanks for watching. And like our friend Brandon Hainline always says, I hope you're smarter at the end of this video than you were before you started. I know I am. So thanks.
I'm always smarter at the end of Brandon's videos too.
Yeah. Well, thanks for watching, and stay tuned in the comments below. Let us know some of the other things maybe we haven't covered in this video, and stay tuned, subscribe, do all that fun stuff, and watch for future episodes. So thanks for watching.